Hello and welcome to this public lecture series on pathways and paradigms for India's G20 presidency. Today, our scanner is on international law. The ongoing conflicts in Ukraine and in other parts of the world has brought to the fore the importance of international law and multilateral systems that safeguard peace and stability. How do we protect civilians and infrastructure in armed conflicts? How do we protect our women, our children, our environment from the ravages of war? How do we make international law and diplomacy effective enough to restore peace and order? To talk to us on India's G20 presidency, making international law work, I'm joined by Professor Bharat Desai, who is a leading expert on international law. Professor Desai is currently chairperson of the Center for International Legal Studies, School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi. He has been a member of Indian delegations and have contributed to various multilateral negotiations between 2002 and 8. Professor Desai has contributed to several facets of international law, and the front matter of his recent book on sexual and gender-based violence, Making International Institutions Work, has been uploaded on United Nations official webpage. Professor Desai has several books published by global publishing houses as well as research papers in prestigious global journals. Professor Desai's contribution has been in proposing the UN Specialized Agency for Environment, the repurposed UN Trusteeship Council, and an international environmental court. He is also the editor-in-chief of the journal Environmental Policy and Law, published in Amsterdam. Professor Desai has contributed immensely for furthering institutional networking and has taken the knowledge initiatives for making SIS visible, an inter-university consortium in JNU, Jammu and Kashmir, and Sikkim. Please join me in welcoming Professor Desai. There is a small token. Thanks. Can India's G20 presidency, which espouses a rule-based order, peace and just growth for all, walk the talk? I will ask Professor Desai how. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I thank profusely my esteemed colleague Samina Hamid. It's a pleasure, and I may be the right person, to little focus on some of the international law issues, and so I appreciate both her and other esteemed colleagues and friends, and this on my own home turf. This is something which I thought I will try to spell out, little mosaic, I would say a broader kind of a picture, so far as as I call it, making international law work, and probably not many of you may be aware, that what does a Center for International Law do, in a School of International Studies. I'll be writing separately, very shortly. I have to, because that some link has been disconnected. But so our role has been, as a kind of a umbilical cord or little kind of a spinal cord, which can really provide a basis to all the area studies and other centers and programs with the SIS actually focuses on. We actually, and I will show you through some of these slides and pictures, as to where do you find international law, because this is normally the question which is often asked in our MA program, that is international law, does it exist, is it law, does it work, these are the questions. And I thought, I'll try to point out and show you as to where it matters, and especially from the broader framework of the G20 presidency which India is holding. So that is my remit, today. And so what I propose to do is to, in about 5 or 6 part, I'll take about maximum 1 hour, I'll try to provide the basic premise of this G20 presidency, how it came into being. This is basically a chain, this is not in isolation, this is a continuum. It was with Indonesians last year, it will be taken over by Brazilians, by at the end of this year, for instance. So this is a kind of a rotating presidency, but yet India had this golden opportunity for the first time, and probably India tried to make the best out of that, and there are those issues, and since we have been struggling, to make ourselves, presence felt, as I call it, India sitting on the global high table, India as a global solution provider, and where does international law matter, in many of those things. So the basic premise I'll provide, then I'll provide the context in which the whole puzzle is taking place, and then what was actually required from India so far the ideas and the solutions are concerned, Then I'll provide some of those global issues. I've done the terrain mapping about 2022 issues, although the time may not permit me, but I'll just, these are basically pictorials. I will not burden you with the text, etc. That is not my way of doing it, But I thought the pictures will speak louder than even the words. So 22 global issues where I thought there is a telltale imprint where, you have a role cut out, And that also raises a larger question about my own school, my own home turf, where my colleagues, will have a huge scope opened up, to contribute scholarly, ideas, for instance, And that is exactly the place, where this India's, pioneering school on international studies, for example, established in 1955. And where else do you expect that kind of a, ideational contribution I am talking about? And there are about 6 issues which I have called out, which basically focus on India's own national interest, basically, India's own international issues on which international law impinges upon, And finally, I'll come to something about concrete ideas, And if somebody will ask me as saying that, well, you talk about those things, do you really walk the talk? I'll try to show you how do I walk the talk. Okay, I don't merely indulge in those kinds of, preaching and, parroting those big phrases. I'll try to literally take you through that kind of a, like, you are walking through a kind of a museum, So I'll take you through that little walk, Now, as already, sorry, yeah, here is the big dome where it's called the Bharat Mandapam, Bharat Mandapam. We should be now familiar with the phraseology, So this is called the Bharat. It's a beautifully, architecture, near that Pragati Maidan vista, and I am sure this is going to be the first major global conference, because earlier most of the global conclaves used to take place in the Vigyan Bhavan, and the Vigyan Bhavan is now going to be probably shifted out, because that becomes a central vista. So this is going to be a beautiful place, where these heads of state, heads of government will assemble, and it's going to be India's big moment in the sun, for instance, where India will be hosting this G20 meeting, just 3 days down the line. So this is the, like the last, although it was supposed to be last, but this is last but one. Sanjay Pandey will be speaking after me, Now, I thought I'll flag this, because I think this will make it very, most of the people have forgotten this, or I thought since I took some pain, for full 5 years doing this exercise, to make my, promote and project my school as a think tank, much before most of the think tanks were actually known and they came and usurped the space. I promoted, SIS on 11th of December 2008. When I started this Making SIS Visible initiative, and I thought with 100 colleagues, in a school like this will be a formidable location, well, everything can really come out of that, and I'm sure this vision and promote still remains there, but I thought, I alone cannot walk the talk. All my colleagues have to make this happen, and I thought this was the right occasion when we could have shown our prowess, by providing that. This could have been, we could have hosted one of the secretariats of one of these events, In fact, I thought, we could have provided logistical support, ideas, a lot of those things, with 100 people here, Nowhere else in the world you will have 100 people working on international studies or international relations, So we have the potential, And I thought, so I'm just providing, I'm talking about, 15 years ago. 15 years ago, this was the vision, and this still stands true today. And we have to walk the talk. We have to make it realize it, both the faculty and the students, And this is the basic premise. And I start with what the Indian Prime Minister said just on 4th of September, where he spoke that why did, what we aimed at, So G20 presidency was to be a catalyst, Okay. It was to shift the humans. It was to from a bureaucratic and technocratic approach, it was to shift to a human-centric approach, and it was to sow the seeds of confidence, because for years together, India never have had this, its place in the sun, never India had this kind of a role to play with on such a scale, resources, humankind, leadership. These are the things which matter ultimately. When you want to be sitting on the global high table, when you want people to take note of you, for instance, you have to walk the talk. So this was basically what probably we have done some extent, because the G20 process is going to continue. So what the seeds which have been sown today, they will germinate. We have to carry. The question is, who will carry forward the torch? From where will the ideas come? That big question I will try to answer it when I toward the end. And here is something with the Prime Minister spoke. I thought maybe we can listen in his own words, something which he spoke, and I have had the honor and the privilege of having a one-on-one meeting with the Honorable Prime Minister, in the Parliament House of India. This was exactly what what I had actually requested him, saying that as a Prime Minister of my country, I want you to speak language of international law. And he's a quick learner. He's a very hard-working person. He's from my home district, so I know him well. So this is exactly what he did. So I will not screen the entire thing, but I'll just briefly. It's just one minute or so. Volume. Yeah, audio नहीं जा रहा है.
International law. We believe that respecting we respect further, and we aim to bring inclusive approach. Ours is not an exclusive approach, and we aim to bring countries together on the basis of respect for international law. We believe that respecting freedom of navigation and adhering to international norms is essential for peace and economic growth in the larger and interlinked marine geography of the Indo-Pacific.
So this is exactly what I wanted you to, little, listen to the Prime Minister, Something with the Prime Minister, yeah. So as you saw, the Prime Minister himself, and I think it's a very rarity. I have seen, if you even go through the past records also, very rarely at the Prime Minister level an emphatic assertion has come, because these are the global processes where there is a telltale imprint, of these hardcore international legal issues. Any of those things which I'll take you through that journey through those issues, and so if this comes out, automatically the message conveys, and you can see this on the 21-22 our position paper with the UN Security Council. Emphatically these three issues came up: dialogue and cooperation. You can see the peaceful settlement of international disputes, mutual respect, one of the principles of cooperation, which is the cardinal principles of the Charter of the United Nations, and commitment to international law. Commitment to international law. India being a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council during 21-22, and this mattered. This actually mattered, and a lot of these initiatives which India took, they were actually corollary to these basic architecture which were laid down at the highest political level. The foreign minister, who happens to be the alumnus of this school, as although most of the foreign service officers will hesitate, because that is not in that training, that is not in that training, because you need to call the animal by the name which it deserves, and international law matters, not the rule-based order, which is goal घुमाते रहते हैं ना. You need to call it explicitly, and that is exactly what matters so far as many of these global issues are concerned. And here is the context. Now, basically what we are talking about, we will not go into the debate, this is my observation. A lot of these geostrategy experts, and I'm not a geostrategic expert, So here what I'm talking about is the United Nations led world order. I'm talking about the post 1945, because you have the only United Nations. Okay, you have not yet discovered any other option for United. When you discover, you talk about on that day. As of now, you have this is the only institutionalized platform for international cooperation. You have to turn to United Nations every single year. Today is the 5th of September. In fact, today the 78th session of the General Assembly of United Nations will commence in New York. I think it's by evening, it will be early morning in New York. 78th session, 78 years are over. So it's a very historic day where the session will start, and then there are series of those. This is exactly what the Secretary General of United Nations spoke about. He literally spread the menu as to what are those challenges which you face, ranging from escalating conflicts, worsening climate chaos, entrenched poverty, hunger, widening inequalities, deepening mistrust and division. They require collective resolve and unified action. Collective resolve and unified action. You require some of those, at least the thought leaders, some of those people. Not everybody can produce, but those which have the capacity, those which have really the might, those I would call it, Whether you like it or not, that is a fact. Although there are some crucial small states which also play the role, like Ghana, like you will have Malta, Ghana, Bangladesh, Maldives, Sri Lanka. Some of these states, small island states, also played a role. But I'm saying, by and large, it's a big countries, which have their role cut out for them, because there are hard-headed, those issues which you have to grapple with. You have to resolve it, and I'll just show you as to how serious the issue itself is. So, world looks to the assembly. And you will see, if you, I've been mentioning in my MA class also, if you, during a particular year from 5th of September to the next year, 2024, you'll see about more than 300 resolutions are adopted by the General Assembly. 300 resolutions. Although there could be a debate about the legal character of the resolutions, but they are resolutions after resolutions, That is the only plenary organ, that is the only democratic organ of United Nations, And for me, this is exactly what I briefly mentioned about the role of the General Assembly of United Nations, And here are the series of those events lined up, ranging from 18th of September, 18th to 19th of September, when there is going to be a summit. Heads of state, heads of government are going to assemble. It seems now the Prime Minister of India, since he will be busy on 18th, the special session of the Parliament will start, so probably he will be skipping the session. Instead, the Foreign Minister, Dr. Jaishankar will be attending, and he's listed to speak on 26th of September. So this is the period. They say in the month of September, all roads lead to New York. All roads lead to, everybody wants to be seen, to be present at the UN General Assembly. Okay, whether you like it or not, even those whom United States never wanted them, they were on their blacklist. Even they had to be allowed, because the diplomatic, there is a UN headquarters agreement. If the United Nations, sends an invitation, including a person like Yasser Arafat, United States could never, 19th of November 1974, when Yasser Arafat was invited, although he didn't represent a state, So that is the power, that is the thing. I won't have the time to go into the entire debate about decolonization, apartheid, and those issues. That is exactly what the battles were fought in the forum of the General Assembly itself. So you will have a high-level political forum where this entire debate, and those of you who are not familiar, please read my blog, which I wrote in the SIS blog, on 12th of August, on audacity of hope, for people and the planet, on how the sustainable development goals at the midway, they are in crisis. So this is going to be a summit meeting. So what halting. So in that meets, crisis. Like we see many of the hilly areas, are taking place, for instance. And so I think you have to, it's too late in the day, but yet you have to have the generations. It's going to be very, although I have started a parallel exercise through my own journal on, the planetary crisis. More than 20 plus global thought leaders. I'm talking about global thought leaders from all parts of the world. A volume by middle of next year. On 5th of June 2024, the volume will be ready. I'm talking about those people who are in that 70. Serious global crisis. When you are doing has to crack it. So you need the idea. So if a country like India has to be sitting, you can't turn deaf ears. You can't close your eyes when the world is on fire. Like the Secretary of the Organization saying that you are not burning the bush, you are burning the planet issue. Before it's going to be too late, for instance. Things are happening. Species are disappearing, seriously, I'll take you through that. And finally, I think nuclear elimination, nuclear weapons sector. So this 18 is going to be a very segment where now this time I'm sure this is scheduled to speak on 26th of September, but I'm sure the delegation, the permanent representatives, our India permanent, representatives, the United Nations will be on the job, but we need a high level delegation. There is no harm if you draw the scholars. Every country does that. Every country does that. They have a big delegations. Handful of bureaucrats sitting there simply cannot do that because there is the additional job. You have to have the lifetime to realize what these problems are there, to crack them, to find. You know, large delegations. Smaller countries, they come with 30 people, 40 people, 50 people. So you have to have it because there are to do that. Whatever the value with the United Nations, the processes they will have. And here is, as I mentioned, the summit of the sustainable at the midway 2015. Spoke about the eradication of poverty, and you saw that in fact many more people have joined the poverty basket. Many more during the pandemic. Whole regression is taking place, and you are talking about the extreme poverty where you can't call them poor. You have to give them some money, and the criteria is $1.7 per day. Look at the criteria: bare minimum survival. Bare minimum survival. You can't call them the human beings also. They'll have food so that they can at least live, for the next day. Staggering poverty which exists in the world. This is exactly what these noble goals aimed at. Now all these goals have been turned topsy-turvy because of the conflicts which are taking place. 1/4 of the world lives in conflict zones. 2 billion people live in the conflict zones, for instance. And unless and until you douse those fires, you saw that half a dozen countries in Africa where the military takeover takes place. Abnormal amount of violence takes place. What used to happen, I will show you some of these slides where the abduction of women and girls take place, for instance. Mass rapes takes place in the conflict zones. If you read some of my blogs, we say rape under orders, not rape by accident, rape under order. Rape as a measure of punishment to the people. You hit where it hurts you most. This is exactly on which 2018 Nobel Peace Prize was awarded. 2018, Nadia Murad and Dennis Mukwege, for instance. That shows the very gravity of the issue which is there. This is exactly the issue on which we came out in the book called Sexual and Gender Violence in International Law. And what, as Sabina mentioned, this is the book which has seen almost 1,550 downloads in last 7 months. 1,550 downloads in 7 months. So these are the issues which really matter. And this is the gender issue is one of the core issue so far as the 17 Sustainable Development Goals are concerned. And here was the issue on which the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, she went to Brazil, and had a meeting, on 1st of August, and then subsequently she actually prepared the ground, in Brasilia, where she was trying to, because Brazil is a large economy and they wanted to do it, in Latin America, for instance, and here are going to be as I mentioned, 2 summits. This September one summit, and the next September another summit will take place. And as I mentioned, the role of the United Nations General Assembly, you won't be able to see it, but these are the last almost 50 years on which the General Assembly has, that shows the General Assembly has been on the job. If somebody says United Nations is not seen, United Nations cannot do it, here is the example. Those who are unbelievers, जो मानते नहीं है, सुनते नहीं है किसी की बात में, no, लगता है कि हम तो नहीं मानते साहब. Here is the example. कहते हैं साहब, the person is on job. Security Council, security guard is on the duty. ये रहा 50 साल से, 50 years, all these global processes. And we have been participating in many of these global processes which have a legally binding effect. Like the Sustainable Development Goals, although they are not a legal instrument per se, but they are taken seriously. Almost they have been mainstreamed. So it seems that how the nation states behave, as long as if you take a process seriously, so be it. Legally binding or no legally binding, it does not matter. And the very fact that these are those issues were right from 1972 to 2022. Last year there was a Stockholm plus 50 meeting, which took place, And there are hard-headed real issues with the General Assembly. As I mentioned, this is the only democratic organ. All other organs have a limited membership. This is the only organ which has 193 members, and they have the delegations. And every year it meets, round the year it meets. As I said, 300 resolutions it adopts, and all those resolutions are absolutely meticulously drafted, ranging from 5 page to 11 page. You need to read. I don't know how many of you have seen it. I think some of your teachers should ask you to read some of these resolutions, both the General Assembly and the Security Council. And here is something which I say as something which is required, India to offer ideas and the solutions, And as the Prime Minister himself said on 1st of December, for instance, you won't be able to read it very clearly, but he said that during our G20 presidency, we shall present India's experiences, learnings and models as possible templates for others, particularly developing countries. Our G20 priorities will be shaped in consultation with not only G20 partners, but also other fellow travelers in the global south, whose voice often goes unheard. Three important parts, because now the slogan which is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, where three pillars are suggested: one earth, one family and one future. So if you want to operationalize, if you want to translate that dream into action, then I think plenty of work will be required. The work is really cut out for you. It's a huge work. If India has to marshal resources, you will need large number of the people. I would say this SIS could be on the job. All these 100 people could be on the job if you want to really make this work, because this G20 process is going to continue for a foreseeable future unless the dramatic or drastic change comes up in this composition, content and other things. You cannot rule that out. So what it says, the one earth, that means there is going to be a healing of the planet. Basically, you are talking about healing of the planet from pandemics, from disease, from hunger, from also malnutrition. How do you heal the planet? As I remember, I had a small clip somebody had sent me. The former Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee had mentioned, I thought, although in a very that poetic language, he said कि हम चंद्रमा पर तो पहुंच गए, but धरती पे हमें रहना नहीं आया. इंसान बन के रहना भी हमें तो नहीं आया हुआ है. So you created problem for yourself, where the global population is growing. You have 8 billion population. By year 2050, you will be 10 billion. Same space, 10 billion population. How will you feel those people? And if you continue to have these conflicts, this entire tug of war, all sorts of fratricidal things which are happening, how will you survive? How will you don't have the resources. As you can see, the humanitarian watchdogs keep complaining about it. No money is not around. People will die. People will go hungry. That is the kind of a situation which we are facing. Because from where? Unending money supply will not be available. Even you won't have the grains, as you saw in the aftermath of the Ukraine crisis, the grains are not available. How will you feed the people? The entire granary, which is Russia and Ukraine, is completely blocked. And it has shown the skyrocketing of the food grain prices. At least people will need to have the food to survive, for instance, So I think what India's priority will be, again promoting harmony with the family, all this supply, food, fertilizer, etc. And for hope for the future generations, we will encourage an honest conversation among the most powerful countries on mitigating the risks posed by weapons of mass destruction and enhancing global security. That also role which India aims at. Nuclear disarmament. Although India is a nuclear weapon state, for instance, and yet if you read India's nuclear doctrine, It says, well, India will still swears by it, although we have adopted the no first use doctrine, but we say we are still committed. We will be part of the conference on disarmament, So that part is always there because there is no other option. As they say, nuclear weapons cannot be used, nuclear war cannot be won. Last year itself, the 1st of January 2022, all nuclear haves, India was not part of it. In Washington DC, that statement is available where they emphatically said Russia was actually part of that declaration by these nuclear fives. That nuclear war cannot be won. That is why you have seen, even although in the Ukraine conflict also the red lines were drawn, but you don't use it because you can't use nuclear weapon, in that proximity. And you saw in the aftermath of this movie, Oppenheimer, it has brought the entire debate back, as to what will happen if somebody by accident also uses the nuclear weapon. You will destroy the world. You will destroy the world. So I think this is exactly what the G20 agenda will be: inclusive, ambitious, action-oriented, decisive. Presidency is called presidency of healing, harmony and hope, and working together to shape a new paradigm, human-centric globalization. So how do you bring about the human-centric globalization? You have to address to the core essential needs of the human beings, that large mass of the people, who have been under that kind of a problematic, Now I will not go into the other parts, If you quickly look at the power balance, in the G20, it controls 85% of the global GDP, 75% of the global trade, and 2/3 of the world population lives in G20 countries. And the breakup is G7 plus European Union. These are the traditional, those group which controls it. Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, UK, and USA. Russia is out of it. Okay, so it's a charm club, So they can kick out anybody and induct anybody. And there are others like partially independent foreign policy: Argentina, Arabia, South Korea, and Turkey, and 6 independent foreign policy countries, BRICS countries basically. Okay, and Indonesia, Brazil, China, India, Indonesia, Russia, and South Africa. So that is why your task is really cut out to be a kind of a part of a pressure group. How far? And now the BRICS has been expanded from 5 into 11. It's likely to increase. But whether that will add to the clout and the stature, that remains to be seen. And this is probably you must have heard, Indian foreign minister, going to the Hindu college and speaking on 31st of August, where he has again underscore, that India is responsible to bring a divided world together, and this is going to be a tall order. How do you bring the divided world, together, How will you heal the wounds, How will you bring the warring parties, on the negotiating table? How will you try to diffuse the things? How will you provide the solutions? Like Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister came, and he said, we are fighting there, come and stop us. We will not stop fighting, but you have to come and stop us. So how do you do it? You have to have the idea, you have to have a person, you have to have the architecture, you have to work for it. It cannot be done suddenly. So these are the issues, where, if you want to bring the divided world, and there are plenty of those things, like the foreign minister himself says, Ukraine war has created many problems for the world. And the world is divided into developed countries and developing countries, And where the world is struggling with challenges such as global health, education, nutrition, good water, energy, and environmental challenge, your task is really cut out. Then how do you address? On the one hand, you have to address the core human needs. Resources are very limited. All these things, efforts are very limited. And it can only come through either the humanitarian watchdogs. And if you ask, I have had the chance to speak to the president of the International Committee of the Red Cross. And he was exasperated. And I said, how do you walk, from Haiti to Yemen, to Ukraine, to these conflict zones where there is death and destruction, And he said, well, these people are not invincible. These forces and these processes are not invincible. Historically, if you see. But it leads to the devastation, destruction. It's very, very easy to destroy, but very difficult to build things, It will take years and generations to rebuild many of those things, And I'll just focus, I will not go into great part, but I'll just focus 3 important meetings which took place so far as the trade and investment ministers are concerned, the finance minister and foreign minister. As you see, that there is a logjam on the issue of Ukraine issue, about the wording, the phraseology of that paragraph. So, India's presidency had not been able to, all G20 ministerial this year under India's presidency have failed to create consensus on a joint statement. Joint statement has not been possible because there are paragraphs where you put the asterisk and say China and Russia, have disagreed. The paragraph also you cannot even. Now, for instance, on 25th of August, the meeting which took place in Jaipur, paragraph 33 clearly says, it is essential to uphold international law. International law is back on the table. And the multilateral system that safeguards the peace and the stability. This includes defending all the purposes and principles enshrined in the Charter of United Nations. And Charter of United Nations itself is a multilateral treaty. It's a product of international law. Hardcore, instrument, which has to. So that means purpose and principles of the Charter of United Nations, which you need to really uphold. And what else is actually, left out. Now, foreign ministers meeting, I'm just culling out that particular paragraph which deals with international law aspect. Like the second March meeting, for instance, in the foreign ministers meeting which took place, I think in Bangalore, where the chair's summary and the outcome document says it is essential to uphold international law. And same phraseology, it has been almost done copied. Or, for instance, the 25th of February meeting, again the same, it's a verbatim same paragraph, copy and paste. Because it's very difficult to arrive at a consensus, very difficult. But at least they could, fortunately, and it carries the final, that phrase, which has become, often it has been quoted, what the Prime Minister himself said, that today's era must not be of war, It can never be of war. Outlawry of war, like I teach in my MA course, one of the first in my winter semester, outlawry of war, the threat to peace, breach of peace, act of aggression is prohibited. Charter of United Nations forbids it. Article 2, paragraph 4 forbids it, But still there are conflicts taking place. There are, as I said, 2 billion people in the world live in conflict zones. Large scale conflicts are taking place and you can't stop them. That means United Nations doesn't have that wherewithal. International law per se does not have that wherewithal to go and catch hold of somebody who is fighting there, for instance, Because the sovereignty is at the crux of it. You live in a world where the sovereignty really matters, So you make the protection of the civilians, infrastructure in the armed conflicts, You make an appeals, for instance, You don't have a mechanism. Of course, there are situations where there are 12 international criminal tribunals have been established. 12 international criminal tribunals to catch hold of the thugs and rogues and those despots, But that is selective. We thought that we put an end to those era of evil, in 1945 with those two tribunals in Nuremberg and Tokyo tribunal. It has mushroomed. It has grown like anything. All parts of the world, There are several people who went scot-free. So I think it's very difficult to catch hold of that evil which we are talking about. Okay, the time will not permit me to elaborate on that. Now, global issues which require Indian leadership. Okay, I'll just flag through it. Quickly so that you'll know what I mean. Where each of those issues, where there are 22 areas which I have culled out. Okay, so it's a formidable. I hope you'll have the patience to, and although there are pictures, so you won't have the difficulty. This was something which, starting with the Indo-German bilateral meeting of the 25th of February, because again your walking the talk will require, not only confabulations with some of those key actors, key players, okay, to diffuse them. If you want to play some role somewhere, role of Germany will be important. Like so far as the Russia, people are adding fuel to the fire, Instead of asking people to stop, people say, you take more weapons so that you can kill each other, very, very nicely, most sophisticated weapons. So that has to end. So you have to diffuse what the German position, which was little neutral. Now Germany has shifted. French again still is a wavering, So here your role shall have to be, very, very important, like the German Chancellor described the Russian aggression, against Ukraine as a major catastrophe, for instance, And India has been taking a position which is very, very nuanced position. India has been talking about dialogue and diplomacy, which are the basic requirement as a means for the settlement of disputes. Pacific means, peaceful means for the settlement of dispute. Dialogue and diplomacy, negotiations. You talk to people. You have a mediator. Like the UN Secretary himself went there. Like this Black Sea, grain agreement, for instance, The Turkey is, doing the role of a mediator. The other day, the Turkish president was there. UN Secretary is on the job. So people are doing that. The role of using your good offices or role of a mediator to diffuse it, so that at least grain embargo could be there. And Russians are insisting that you ask the West to allow our grains. So you can't have it one-way traffic. So there is exactly where there is a kind of 33 million tons of grain could be exported during that one year period. And again, there is an embargo on that. So you have to engage with a lot of these other people. Sometimes it can be very explicit with a full glare of publicity like this one, or it can be backroom negotiation. You can have, a lot of other people, but you need the people. You need the people. People with that background, people who know the area, people who know the people who know the issues to crack it. And there are very difficult, nuts to crack, You have to have that kind of a issue, You have to trust people, for instance, And I think that we need to, little move into that category, where you broaden the ambit apart from the, I have nothing against the Indian Foreign Service people. They're very nice people, very, very nice people, very nice people. But there are other nice people also. And I'm talking about the scholarship. I'm talking about scholarship. You have to do it. If India has to play that role, without the scholars, you can't make this. You can't till the windmills. Because you need the people who spend a lifetime doing those issues. Like what Putin said. He said, well, West started the war and we are using force to end it. So this is going to be other kind of a thing. Plenty of other background are there. The European 400 years of European history is being repeated there, ethnic issues are there, So there are other issues which we have to, like what Henry Kissinger said, probably he might go even at the age of 100 plus. He's still very strong. He went the other day to Beijing, now he might even end up, in Moscow, although there will be furor, although his own country may not support, but probably if they need somebody, only he is available, he can go, So I think you'll need, to diffuse, a lot of these things, I was mentioning about the global humanitarian crisis. There are more than 50 million people around the world, who currently need humanitarian assistance. 350 million people who will need immediate assistance, for which the humanitarian watchdog Martin Griffith, UN humanitarian relief coordinator, said that the estimated funding required will be $54 billion. 54 billion US dollar, and the money is not available anywhere. 350 million people will require that kind of assistance. Country after country, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen, large number of countries are basket cases. There is absolutely hunger. Sudan, where the warfare have been going on, starvation is there. Nothing grows there because there are battlefields. So how do you feed at least those hungry people, for instance, do you allow the catastrophe to take place? And I think that is one of the biggest challenge. You can look at those big, countries where the people, the very fact that people are making an effort. And I think these are the areas and issues where India shall have to matter. We shall have to have a big role to play. Although we don't have a war chest, we don't have a big amount of financial kind of resources available, but whatever is available, I would say sheer presence will matter if you want to really diffuse these things. Like we did with grain supply and other things, we provided. Some kind of a monetary assistance, some kind of a material assistance can also be provided. You have a sea level rise, which is the great planetary risk which is happening. Country after country, there are many low-lying areas which are absolutely, submerging. This is going to be the future. A large number of the island states are going to disappear. Many of the areas, probably if you see coastal areas of India, also witness submergence during a particular. Gradually, the sea water is creeping into the. So your area is shrinking. Your fertile area, human habitations are shrinking, and there are larger issues, and you have to have the large scale. And these are the warning issued by World Meteorological Organization. United Nations Watchdog has issued the warning saying that you have to move in, for instance, to those vanishing coastlines, endangered nations, forced migration. Because what do the people do? People will migrate. Migration will start. It will not witness, the border. Like in Africa, the elephants, they never witness the borders, because you can't stop them. Nature never designed the borders. It's the human beings who created the borders, So in that case, if the mass migration start, what will you do? You are asking for a first-rate crisis, which will be there. All those people who are displaced because of the migration. You can see the hurricanes and cyclones which are taking place. See the ferocity with which it happens, In your quest to conquer nature, lot of things which have happened, you touch upon those essential ecological processes. In 1972, the Club of Rome report had said that, this is something global problematic, You know this will happen, yet you don't know the consequences, or you don't have the wherewithal to stop it. So you have to draw the limits. The question is, who will work out the limits? So question is, when you draw, because the time is running out, and I think that is going to be very, very important. The sea level rise, again the ferocity. They say the global sea level which has risen faster since 1900 than over any preceding century in the last 3000 years. In last 100 years, the sea level has risen, which never ever rose, in last 3000 years. Unprecedented level at which, because of global warming, which is thermal expansion of the ocean takes place, and it's really inundating the places, the areas which are low-lying areas or elsewhere, for instance, and I think you won't have the resources, to control the earthquakes and these natural disasters which are taking place, like Syria and elsewhere. You saw, and as I said, although there is an undercurrent that we have not yet moved in the direction. When you talk about, and each of the area which I am talking about, which is actually addressed by one of the areas of international law. Okay, time will not permit me to spell out in detail everything. Here, for instance, the international disaster law is still in the making. You don't have that mechanism. You don't have that instrument, to address these, either the natural disasters or man-made disasters. Both could be very equally destructive. For instance, you don't have the resources, you don't have the agency, you don't have the means and methods to control them, for instance, if they strike, like the tsunami or most of the hurricanes when they strike, or abnormal weather pattern, rains, or like we saw the mountains are coming down, what will you do? Nothing can be done. You have to change the entire developmental pattern which you took it for granted for long period. A large number of the countries have this, top heavy structure, RCC structures. They say people are killed not because of the earthquake, but because of the buildings. Because buildings are top heavy. They kill people. Now, something which I thought I'll mention, when I was a student, I wrote this paper, 1919 I am talking about. You count the number of years. Published in Social Science and Medicine, okay. Something which I have been encouraging my students to think little ahead and aloud, never ever fear ki I cannot write, this is my PhD level, all through 120 supervisions which I have done, I have always encouraged my students to think aloud, So there is no, it's not barred by age or a time, etc. This is what, when I was a student, and I know people were skeptic, saying that, tum zyada hi ambitious ban rahe ho. And this is what I wrote in 1990, that paper, Social Science and Medicine, published by Parga and Prose in Oxford, that the comprehensive global convention on mass disasters encompassing sharing of the data, transfer of disaster management technology to developing countries is now need of the hour. More than 30 years are over. And we still don't have any international that instrument to deal with the disasters. And this is the need of the hour. So I think these are the issues which really shall have to be dealt with, and somewhere somebody has to take the initiative. Somebody has to build the cat. Plenty. I'm just doing the terrain mapping. I'm providing you the issues. Okay, it's a huge number of issues, And here is one of the very global concern, where the female genital mutilation, one of the biggest global concern. More than 200 million women have been subjected to FGM. More than 200 million. In 2023 alone, 4.2 million women and girls were subjected to female genital mutilation. This is regarded the worst violation of human right. For non-medical purposes, you are talking about. Half of the states in the United States have enacted a legislation prohibiting FGM. Large number of the Islamic countries and the African countries have also prohibited it. And large number of the countries which have been saying that, well, culture, tradition, those things, But when the human rights issues are concerned, and you are doing it, that tender girls at the age of 6 to 8 or 10 years, where is the question of consent? Whose consent will you take, So obviously, this human right paradigm is moving in a different direction, where this so-called tradition, if you take shelter in the traditions and cultures, etc., large number of the things which are taking place because under that shelter itself. So we are moving into that area, and we actually published that article in the Indian Journal of International Law, 2020, on the elimination of female genital mutilation, making international human rights law work. If somebody is interested, it's available. I am sure the GNU library will have it. It's a comprehensive article with all tabular data. The only article, people were not willing to publish this article. All these global journals were not willing to publish this article. It assembled the data from the WHO, World Health Organization, went through a rigorous process, and finally this is published. It covers even the country like European Union, they also have the FGM. United States have it. Country like UK also has it. Not only South Asian diaspora, but elsewhere. So the whole issue, I am talking about 200 million women and girls. Okay. Here is again what I'm talking about is the issue like closure of the past, like all these here is a this sculpture outside Dhaka city in Mujibnagar, where a Bangladesh a woman has been shown where the retreating Pakistani troops indulge in the mass rapes. 200,000 to 400,000 Bangladeshi women were raped, and Bangladesh is asking for apology, obviously reparations, and it led to a standoff in February itself when Bangladesh foreign minister ran into the Pakistani deputy foreign minister in Colombo, and he said, we will talk to you provided you tender an apology. And she said, this is not my area, okay, this is beyond my competence. She said, we have some limitations. How far? So I'm talking about this just one example, country after country. Japan and South Korea, Korean comfort woman issue, again Koreans have been asking for that thing. So there are plenty of issues, country after, and you saw it on 1st of July, none other than the Dutch monarch came forward and tender apology for slavery. Dutch monarch tender apology for slavery. काफी लोग के lot of people say कि साहब माफी मांगने से क्या हो जाएगा, तो फिर क्या और आप क्या करना चाहते हैं? It's a 100-year period. 100 years are lapsed. You can't put the clock back. You can't rewrite the history. You can't bring the dead alive. What will you do? The damage is done. People suffered. So the only decent way, and this is the international law mechanism, what is called satisfaction, reparation. That is the only way. And country after country, they are trying to do it. Like Canada did it, Australia did it, United States did it, and we are waiting for our own share of the history. Jallianwala Bagh massacre, Amritsar, or like Bengal famine. Plenty of those things which we are vague. So I'm talking about a huge thing where we shall have to play the role on closure of the past, putting a lead on the past, because unless you close the past, you can't move into the future. हम कह रहे हैं ना, common future. We can't move into the common future unless you douse the fires. Ask people to come to the terms. You shall have to play the role. And I have written an article. मैं इसलिए मैं बात कर जो मैं कह रहा हूँ मैं पहले लिख चुका हूँ, ठीक है, पहले मैं करता हूँ फिर. So there are almost 30 blog articles in SIS blog में है. All of you can take a look at those issues. Quickly, some of the important issues which have come up before the International Court of Justice, asking for an advisory opinion on climate change issue. On 12th of April, the United Nations Secretary General wrote a letter to after the resolution was passed by the General Assembly, asking for, obligation of the states in respect of climate change, Although there is a global convention is still there, but people thought it will be advisable to seek an opinion from the International Court of Justice. Opinions are opinions. It will matter. And these are the two concrete questions. What are the obligations of the states under international law to ensure protection of the climate system? And what are the legal consequences under these obligations for states where they are, or by their acts, or omission, where the state do not comply with the obligations, At least the International Court of Justice will spell out as to what will lead to if you do not comply with the international obligations. So far as the climate change, mitigation itself is concerned. It will take at least 2 years for the opinion to come out, but at least the very fact that process is triggered. Here is something which I call Operation Dost, which we send the relief material. Again, you needed why you do it? International cooperation, friendly relations, including in Turkey. The Turkish president has been often, with a foot in the mouth, he has been talking, okay, which has been strongly disapproved by the Minister of Foreign Affairs. And yet you did it. He said, at this stage, at this juncture, when the natural calamity has, has struck Iraq and Syria, we are not going to those issues. And immediately you saw the adventurous journey which the transport aircraft which took those contingent, they traveled for almost 7 to 8 hours. Then by road they traveled, they went and still immediately put up a tent, and they, with all the excavators and everything they took, so that because people were dying. Look at the audacity. They took even the whole group of army dogs also to at least to find people who are under the the rubble, etc. And that took, look at the material, look at this. These things require a lot of effort and energy, but you have got to do it. And if you are a resourceful country and bigger country, people will expect you. A smaller country cannot do it. So I'm talking about that the role is cut out for you. And we have been doing it, I think. I'm sure India has been doing to the best extent possible whenever these relief materials are there. But I think we shall have to work on it, for instance, as to a larger architecture when such disasters strike. As I said, disaster law shall have to be expanded, There is another opinion which has been sought, which probably you will remember, on Palestine question, occupied Palestine territory. Again, the previous opinion was taken in 2004, and now this is a new opinion on Israeli practices affecting the human rights of the Palestinian people in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem, on 19th of January. And this, after 20 years, the International Court of Justice is called upon to give another opinion. I'm sure India shall have to, we may not do it because, this time, because we have a, good, India-Israel relations are on a good trajectory. Probably we may not be, because Israel supplies arms to India, everything, intelligence, everything. So I don't think we will rock the boat, India's position has taken a little shift, but they have to take a call. Ultimately, they have to take a call. India has to file a written statement or submissions, etc. But this is an advisory opinion which is pending, where hardcore international law issues shall have to be spelled out. And World Economic Forum, again, where the financial part which will be spelled out, by UN Secretary General, where a lot of this, as you saw, the entire restructuring of the IMF and the World Bank and the financial architecture with the Bretton Woods system. It is, a lot of hammering is being given to that Bretton Woods system, So it will take time, and India with a larger corpus of, special drawing rights and other things, India has a clout, probably how far we will play that role with, now we are the 5th largest economy. If you, march into the third, being the 3rd largest, probably India shall have more resources and more say, because it's already skewed, in favor of the industrialized countries, the powerful countries. We shall have to, change the equation, and so India shall have a, like the Prime Minister often says, this architecture of the past, cannot work in the present. 20th century institutions cannot work in the 21st century. So we have a role cut out, And again, the Burkina Faso abduction of women and girls, again, like what used to happen in Middle Ages, those issues are there, Boko Haram and others, where even the sex slaves are being kept, hundreds of girls are being abducted, like what was being done by, I guess, in a lot of the Yazdi areas, etc. This is one of the biggest challenge which is being there. Transition into energy area, like the target is from today, is at 30% of energy comes from, renewables. We aim at about 60% by 2030 and by 90% by but you will need resources, you will need technology. Like all the harnessing of the International Solar Alliance, which India has really put up, in Gurugram, it has to work. Technology has to be available, solar resources has to be available. We have the abundant resources, If you can have the, like the Chandrayaan and the Mangalyaan to run on solar energy, obviously you can run things, But the resources, because the fossil fuel is still refusing to go away. Till that goes away, this alternative technology will not come. So you have a challenge, balancing till the new technology comes, resources, etc. We will have to work. Other things, a lot of countries are facing this femicide. People are killed because of their gender, woman. Mexico, Brazil, shot dead. Per day, 10 women are being killed in Mexico. Same in Brazil. They are just shot dead because you are a woman. We have our own share here. We have our own share. If you look at the figures of the National Crime Record Bureau, for instance, the spine-chilling account, I don't want to go into that, other it will spoil your mood, and the migration, global migration crisis, US-Mexico border, where the people are simply, taking any risk, just to leave those areas, So migration, you will have to work on the migration aspect also. Taliban, again, the woman, once they came, they put all women, behind curtains, education, everything, servicing, nothing is possible. And you are talking about 3rd decade of the 21st century, and the world feel helpless. United Nations keeps pleading to the Taliban, saying that please spare them, and they don't listen to you. I think that is one of the biggest. So how do you crack, and most importantly, we need to, when we talk about the terrorism, this was the classic example I thought I'll flag, on 9th of December 2022, last month of India's presidency, when India had the 2-year non-permanent membership, Indian Foreign Minister was in New York, and he was chairing the meeting, and the resolution 2664, if you can check, resolution 2664 was introduced, where issues, the definition of terrorism, there was no consensus. Like India's foreign minister mooted, pushed for what is called terrorism as an existential threat. Most of the other countries who were members of the Security Council, they preferred one of the most serious threats to international peace and security. For them, terrorism is not an existential threat. And the result was, the resolution mooted there was adopted by 14-0. India as a president, India who mooted the resolution, had to abstain. Because since it is your resolution, you can't vote against you. 14-1, all people were on one side. And this is about the terrorism. When you talk about eradicating terrorism, here is a ground reality, where countries still do not even work on the definition, for instance, Biodiversity, I'll just keep the climate change. Again, there is things which are available. We will have the COP20 meeting in Dubai just few weeks down the line. On 30th of November, it will start. Again, it's the going on and on and on, nothing, because I have been part of the India's official delegation for many years, and I know it very well. It's a bottomless barrel, nothing is going to come out concretely, And multilateralism again is going to be a huge thing. What Subramaniam Chandrasekhar, Jaishankar said, about pushing the agenda of multilateralism. We have to give a shape to it. All that I can say at this stage, Okay. And gender parity, one of the biggest challenges which United Nations has cracked on all services, positions, etc. This almost they reached the half mark, The UN high level positions, etc. 50% staff is women now. So they reached the gender parity at least, on even the UN peacekeeping forces also, where women contingents are there. We have, India's contingent also carrying, having women as a part of the United Nations, that contingent, And the special session of the general emergency session, which again spoke about that probably you need to know. Again, we have to measure, because we are eyeing for a non-permanent seat of the UN Security Council. Okay? We want a permanent seat. Forget about the veto, etc. Now there is a new dramatic change which has come about. The General Assembly has invoked the special session where they say, as and when a particular permanent member of the Security Council uses the veto, within 10 weeks, the special session of the General Assembly will be convened, and the veto exercising country, the country which used veto, will be called upon to give explanation that why they use the veto. So there is some kind of a check. Veto will not be used in a very unfettered manner, So what I am talking is the, blunting the edges of the veto. Veto was a necessity in 1945, but now there are ways and means in which veto can be undermined. Veto can be, at least minimized. Although it's a fact, you cannot wipe out from the charter, because this country will not allow it. But I think these are the places where you can do it. Now quickly, India's legal position, couple of issues which are of concern to us, and we have to do it. Arunachal Pradesh, you saw it. These are the two issues on which, China has been asserting claim, sovereignty issues, etc. on Arunachal Pradesh, and we have been rebuffing the Chinese claims about it, and this was the United States Senate has passed a resolution. Look at the development. United States Senate has passed a resolution on 18th of February, bipartisan resolution, recognize Arunachal Pradesh not as a disputed territory, but as an integral part of the territory of India. So these lot of things will work, because you need that legitimacy, you need that. Coming out, Senate is a very rare action where the US Senate, diplomacy, personal repo, those things will matter when your vital national interests are there. The other issue is, of course, Kashmir issue, where you saw, that the United Nations Security Council had a closed door meeting without agenda, without outcome. They assembled and went home. Nothing, no decision, no resolution. And in the last 50 years, the Security Council has never ever held any meeting on the India-Pakistan conflict, etc. So there is no word Kashmir issue. Kashmir issue is not the agenda. India-Pakistan, situation is on the agenda, And that also I have written a blog article, nailing the filibuster, of the seized item on the Security Council's agenda, So these are the vital where your national sovereignty issues are there. Or the transcontinental translocation of the animals, again a new issue, international wildlife law. We shall to work. We brought 22 cheetahs to Kuno National Park. You saw that. Again, it's a very audacious, ambitious project that shows how when you talk about world as a family, international cooperation, these things will matter, in a particular context, In the Water Treaty, again, I have written in 2020, 2021, in leading journal, 60 years of the Indus Water Treaty. One of our student, Tahir is working his thesis on the Indus Water Treaty. And now you saw that for the first time India has served a notice to Pakistan that we want to revisit the treaty. So far we were hesitant. And when I wrote this piece, I said onus lies on India to bring Pakistan to the negotiation table. Because you are a bigger country. you have the resources, Pakistan cannot be expected to do it. If you want to bring about behavioral change, and since the water flows are shrinking, glaciers are melting, if you want to do it, and we did so, I don't think we have got any concrete reply from the Pakistan side, but the very fact that the chips are down, at least in the water treaty we have sort of thing, rather than being on the defensive, this was being, little stepping forward to ask yourself a revision of the Indus water treaty. This was a very remarkable thing, and you can read this article which Environmental Policy and Law has published, and POK again, as and when, these issues come up, they are highly controversial, where the OIC Secretary General, Brahim Taha visited POK, and we protested because we think, we assert that this area, is part and parcel of India, lot of this area, Gilgit, Baltistan, Hunja and those areas. In fact, Doordarshan was actually showing the temperatures of those cities, for instance, So there is a consistency, you cannot allow these issues, including representation. These are larger, I will not, in the public domain, I will not go into those issues, kind of the, things which I ended up playing that kind of role, I hope something will accrue out of that, And the advent of the new technology, drone, again a new menace, as you see, the weapons are coming, the narcotics are coming. So border has, and you have a challenge to face, You can't create a shield, like the Israelis have been trying to create a shield, the missile shield, so that from Gaza Strip, the missiles coming from the Palestinian side, could be knocked down. And this is the biggest challenge. You have to work out, technology need to be countered by technology. Small drones of this size bringing 5 kilogram of, narcotics, or dropping something in the middle of the night, in a field. These are the big challenges which are happening, and you have to work it. We have to work on these new technology, solution at the global level, How do you regulate this new technology? And finally, the human trafficking issue. This is from my home state, my own home district, where four people, the family perished last year when they went to Canada, while crossing the US border, they are frozen to death in minus 39-degree temperature. कहते हैं किसी के पेट का पानी नहीं हिला यहाँ. No, but people were simply not perturbed about it. We have to. There is a huge thing going on. You need to seen to be believed. Not only the people are being migrated, Punjab, many others, Gujarat, Kerala. People are simply living, people are being taken away, escorted, or other area is woman trafficking. 13 lakh women disappeared from India. 1.3 million women disappeared from India in last 4 years. Who took them away? Where did they go? It's one of the biggest challenge, one of the biggest human trafficking scandal. And I think we have to have, our agencies need to be alert. We have to have the tie-up and the intelligence with the neighboring country. We have to plug the loopholes, the greed of the people. Each day you can see. So I think this is one of the biggest issue, and there is a global convention where India is a party. United Nations Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime, for instance, Within that framework, so we have to, what I am talking about is, you need to zero in and do it. Now you will ask me the question कि सब आप क्या काम करते हैं? आपने तो बड़ी-बड़ी बातें कर दी आप. Do you do something? So I'll just give you a little flip through it, I hope you will tolerate it. This is something. Do ideas matter? As I said, do ideas matter? This is a trilogy, 2023, 22, 21, these last 3 years. Again, these three, the trilogy second part, again published from, one is the English version, the second is the German edition, they are coming out. And these three again address some of the issues which I have already discussed about. Only I am talking about because the time will not permit me. Global environmental governance, the planetary trust, planetary crisis you are talking about, you need to have those solutions, And obviously, as I mentioned, the SIS blog, I could squeeze in about 28 blog articles. See, दो part में है. आप जरा, if you have the time, energy, appetite, please take a look at all these, some of the issues which I am talking about. They have been elaborated and dealt with at length, And finally, 4-5 issues I thought I'll flag, that if India needs to be the global solution provided, India has to, again work, again it requires a huge amount of work, scholarly work. When you are challenging the international institutional cooperation of the past century, you have to reinvent. You can't create a new United Nations. But how do you do it? How do you do the bypass? Like the Deputy Secretary General of United Nations was created without amendment of the Charter. Or like the observer system of United Nations has been put into place without amendment of the Charter. A lot of those things can be done. So if you want to reprioritize or refocus the things, if India has to be there, for instance, if you'll require, I'm talking about a huge amount of effort. scholarly effort. Somebody has to sit and do the work. There are think tanks like when the Afghan peace accord was negotiated, Germany, some of the top education institutions like the Max Planck Institute worked day and night and cracked it, provided the blueprint, constitution, and that led to peace in Afghanistan for some 20 years. We can do it. You have to do it, where you have to make your academic scholarly, from where else the ideas will come. So-called think tanks mein nahi aa sakte. So I think these are the ideas which we have to, do it, including asserting India's permanent membership of the UN Security Council. Secondly, again we need to push. I wrote a blog article on artificial intelligence, taming the beast, and the Prime Minister has already made an announcement, ethical artificial intelligence. We need to again work on the global regulatory mechanism, new technological changes. The third important thing, in Riyadh summit, the Prime Minister went almost close to saying that the trusteeship for the planet. I have a full proposal on repurpose of the UN. That's the only proposal, I have no hesitation in saying that because I am standing on my own home turf. This is only proposal, global scholarly proposal. From the northern bloc also, not one single scholar has done it. And this is a very old proposal. People told me that this is something, there is no hope. This is absolutely very ambitious. After 20 years, in 2021, the report of the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, said that now the time has come to repurpose the trusteeship council after 20 years. And already it has been spelled out. If you want to repurpose the trusteeship, what kind of a mandate you will give for environment and the global commerce? So there is already, it's available. I think the blog article, there are 2 blog articles in the SIS journal that you will be able to see. So I hope that the Prime Minister will be able to push the envelope and saying that if you want to ask for the trusteeship for the planet, you need an architecture, you need a machinery. All that you need to do is open the doors of the trusteeship council hall at the UN headquarters. That's it. It will not cost you anything. The body exists on the UN Charter, is one of the principal organs of United Nations. But the roadblock, mental block has to be removed. A lot of people, who get scared by these ideas. But if they say, no one can stop an idea whose time has come, and I'm sure this will see the light of the day someday. Third, as I said, like the Prime Minister himself said, today is not the era of war, And as I mentioned, 1/4 of the world lives in conflict zones. 1/4 of the world, 2 billion people live there. It plays death and destruction, havoc, hunger, malnutrition, mass rapes, use of rape as an instrument of warfare to punish the people, for instance. War crime tribunals cannot do anything. So we have to ensure that the conflicts are minimized. Only then all those things you can talk about, unless the conflicts are ruled out. We have to put in place a mechanism. And sustainable development goals, like the summit is taking place on 18th and 19th of September this month. Next 2 weeks, we shall, I don't know, I am not privy to that. Preparation has to be there. You have to have a concrete blueprint, How do you reduce the debt of the country? How do you enable the countries to come out with the additional resources so that the hunger, I'm talking minimal issue like eradication of poverty, hunger, malnutrition, issues like gender, climate change. These are the core issues which, how do you translate them into action? Are you going to wait till 2030? By that time it will be too late. So that is important. And as I said, the countdown has started for Summit of the Future, 2024. Summit of the Future 2024, It's over? No, I don't know. Okay. So I think for the next year, I think again we shall have to have a preparation, because from scholarly I have already done it. Okay. That task is cut out for me, I already launched the process, so we shall have to prepare, and the people are now thinking about the rights of the future generations. Rights of the future generations, the youth, that what will happen in the future. So people are already preparing. I'm sure a lot of countries have a work cut out, and I'm sure India has a work cut out for itself, And this, as I said, is a battle of ideas, and we shall have to really put into place a mechanism. It cannot be ad hoc. G20 process, I'm talking about the process which is even beyond G20. Because G20 has a limited area. You have to go back to the main forum, the United Nations, for instance, where the main role of the game will be played, And different, like the BRICS already provides us a forum, G20 provides us a forum, General Assembly again provides us a forum. Anytime you can turn to the General Assembly. But we have to do the homework. And I'm sure, as I said, the battle will be ideational battle, and we have to walk the talk, for instance. We have to put in place a mechanism, we have to commission those ideas, and I'm sure, as I said, I can only do betting for my own home turf, my own school. My colleagues shall have to rise to the occasion. That if somebody says, where can that hardcore cutting edge work can be done, on these international relations, area studies and international law, I would
one emperor had spoken about कि धरती पर स्वर्ग कहाँ है, I would say it's here, it's here, it's here. SIS, SIS, SIS. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Professor Desai, for telling us that we are at a momentous juncture where we can mold discourses and set processes into motion. We may not see the fruits in immediate future, but if we are chartering or treading on the right
direction, we will eventually reach there. Thank you so much. Much of Professor Desai's expertise was visible in the later, what we were actually looking for, so I used my discretion to cut on your Q&A session because Professor Desai is our professor here. He's very much accessible. There is another, back-to-back lecture, so we cannot eat away. I can give quick 2 minutes, 1 minute for the question and 1 minute for the answer. The first one.
My question was that you talked of an amazing idea. We should bring scholars who have done work on the ground into the mainstream of our strategic thinking. So where do you think that we have seen India has already suffered at international forums like WTO because of the incompetence of our lawyers and scholars. Where do you think that are the roadblocks coming in achieving that, and do you think it will happen in the near future?
Well, if you look at the Bali summit, for instance, Bali statement, Bali declaration, there are 52 paragraphs. Okay, I have just mentioned 22 plus 6, about 28. Okay, so whole terrain mapping will take a full day. There are plenty of those issues. Last year's priorities are different, this year's priorities are different, next year it will be different. What I'm talking about is you have to do the homework. Okay, if you are like leadership, etc., and if you want to leave your imprint, not only this year I'm talking about, the things won't end here. Next year also Indian delegation will go, but you have to have a broader kind of a thing, institutionalize the process. So if you want to make the difference, all three things will be required. One is the architecture. Okay, as I said, these things cannot be generated, within a few months. It cannot be push button things, It is a long-term process, Look, people spend their lifetimes here. So one is the architecture, and that can only happen where the cutting-edge research takes place. Both the faculty does it, student do it. Jointly it can, like some of my work I have done jointly with my own students, It's doable, possible. Second, you need a person of that stature, okay? I don't want to spell out the characteristics of that person क्योंकि थोड़ा it will be थोड़ा unpleasant हो जाएगा मैं कहने जाऊंगा तो ठीक है a person of that stature who will stand up and go and talk to that global. I'm not talking about merely, you don't need to be necessarily.
You will join me in thanking Professor Desai.